Hi, John.
It's like WWDC all over again. Although, at least WWDC was over quickly because it's like, well, it's clear I didn't get tickets. Here, it's just clear these people don't know how to make websites that can withstand any kind of load. But we have many devices working on it. Tina actually did get tickets for tomorrow, for not the Thursday opening night, but the Friday one, but she accidentally bought 3D.
And that's not acceptable because of motion sickness?
No, it's not acceptable because 3D is terrible.
Oh, I agree, but I wasn't sure. I figured desperation would make it acceptable, but apparently not.
I'm going to watch it. I mean, if it's all I can get, it's all I can get. But, well, that's just really... many times I got to the stage where you're picking your seats to reserve. Many times I got to that step. Is
the theater near you like an Alamo Draft House in some fancy and highfalutin, or is it...
No, none of these are fancy. They're all just whatever. I mean, the fanciest one is the one we actually have tickets for. It's reserved seating, and it's the big reclining seats and everything like that, but 3D, come on. So I may be distracted during this episode as I occasionally reload the 5,000 tabs that I have pre-configured to exactly the page where you can buy tickets, all of which are just returning, 503 gateway errors or just spinning forever, because that's great.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a problem because I'm not at all distracted by the New York Football Giants that are currently acting like the Giants.
No one cares about football, Casey. This is Star Wars.
Meh.
Football games happen every year. People get concussions.
Yeah.
They have terrible brain injury that destroys their entire family.
Also true.
And it happens, 16 times every year.
Yep. But to put things in perspective with regard to my priorities, Aaron and I were just having a very casual debate, which we didn't even conclude as to whether or not we would go see this movie in the theaters.
You should stay away and let other people get the tickets.
I love John that you're able to resist every Apple product on day one, every new release of anything. Like you're able to say, you know what, I'm gonna let everybody else go try those things first and tell me what's wrong so I know whether to actually do it myself. But with this, you're going right in.
It's Star Wars. I mean, and it's also a slightly smaller investment than a multi-$1,000 Mac.
I don't know, man. Your dreams and hopes and wants and desires, they're a pretty big investment that you're putting on this movie.
The main investment that I'm protecting with this whole thing is the investment I have put into avoiding Star Wars-related spoilers. That is a serious investment that can be destroyed very easily when the rest of the world has seen the movie and you haven't.
All right, so I'm sorry it wasn't completely successful, but hopefully it's successful enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I will see it in 2D eventually. I just really don't like 3D.
All right, so you want to do some follow-up? Chipworks has some thoughts on the 2A9s. I don't know if, John, you wanted to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, I put this in there, and I was all excited. This is going to be a really detailed breakdown of what is different about the chips with little microscopic views, and there was a little bit of that, but there's two problems with it. One, a lot of it, the stuff in it is over my head, because they're using lingo that they assume everybody knows, and I don't know. Or I have a vague idea of what it means, but I don't understand the implications. Like, one of the chips says weak NMOS. I have vague memories of what that is, but I don't understand what the implications are. Anyway, I suppose I could look it up. And the other one is that there's a lot of information about all the other components that I don't care about. Who do they use for the display controller? What chip did they use for the power regulating thing or the battery thing? Or, like all sorts of other stuff that I'm not interested in. But we'll put a link in the show notes because Chipworks is the only place I know that is taking these things apart and like slicing the chips open and putting them under microscopes and stuff like that. So no real news there, but for people who understand more about this than I do, maybe they can glean something from it.
Excellent. And speaking of the A9s, Consumer Reports weighed in about them.
That's a more reasonable consumer-focused test. Consumer Reports has had a spotty history with technology and everything, really. Like, Consumer Reports I always wonder about because the more I know about a topic, the more I think Consumer Reports selections don't make any sense. And so that makes me suspect, like, maybe their dishwasher recommendations also don't make any sense. I don't know anything about dishwashers, but every time I know something about it, like their car reviews, like the cars they pick, they recommend for you to get, I guess it's really, they just have different criteria than I do. Like the way they pick cars is, those are not, the things that are important to them are not the same things that are important to me. And that's true in a lot of things. If you look at Car and Driver, for example, and they're always emphasizing like performance and handling and stuff like that. And it's like, maybe that's not what's important to you and you should read Consumer Reports. Anyway.
Right, you hate performance.
Well, no, I don't, but So their their test of the batteries is more or less what I was looking for. Like, they're trying to do real world testing. I think their testing was pretty timid. It's similar to the battery testing that I did when I was doing Mavericks. It's very, like, I would call it light usage. Maybe they're calling it medium usage, or they just loaded a bunch of web pages over and over again. But they did do a bunch of fairly standard things, I think probably in a way that is less stressful than someone actually using the phone. They also monitored the temperature of both of the phones during this, which I thought was a good idea because, hey, maybe one of them is hotter than the other. And they didn't find any appreciable differences. So basically said 1% to 2% differences in their tests, which they consider not an appreciable difference and like within the margin of error. So there you go. The benchmark testing may have showed a 20 or 30%, but the Consumer Reports attempt to simulate real world usage, which they detail. You should follow the link we'll put in the notes. They detail what they did, like, we loaded a web page repeatedly for this amount of time, or we ran this thing for this amount of time. You can see what they did and see if that is representative of how you use your phone, and then you'll know what the difference is. But anyway, Consumer Reports loves a good story about Apple phones being broken in some way, so if they are not jumping on this and saying that one of the A9s is much, much worse than the other, it's a pretty good bet that they're about the same.
Excellent. All right, and somebody wrote in with regard to Fusion drives.
Jopterhorst, you're not going to say that name? It's exciting.
Nope.
So this is the about the Fusion drive size. We're complaining they had dropped the flash portion of the Fusion drive in the new iMacs down to 24 gigs from 128 gigs. But apparently if you get the 2 or 3 gigabyte Fusion drive, you do get the old 128 gigabytes of SSD.
2 or 3 terabyte.
Terabyte, yes. Only the 1 terabyte Fusion drive option has the 24 gig one. So that's some good news on that front, I suppose.
All right. And Toby wrote in and had an interesting point. They said, when I hear the merits of the Magic Trackpad discussed, it's usually in comparison to using a mouse, but I find it really comes into its own in combination with a mouse. And we've heard this from a few other people. I heard this from Mike Hurley a year ago now, I think at least. But I'd forgotten about it. I'm glad Toby said something. I have never run both a Magic Trackpad and a mouse. I love my Magic Mouse, even though it's ergonomically atrocious, but I love the functionality it provides for me. I was lamenting on Twitter, I don't know, yesterday, the day before, or maybe it was on here actually, on this podcast somewhere. I was lamenting that I think my mousing days may be over shortly, because I think Force Touch will eventually catch on to the point that I'm going to be kind of grumbly about not having it on the Magic Mouse. And I've been thinking a lot about maybe I should just get one of these stupid Magic Trackpads and just embrace the future in the same way that maybe my next car, I should just get a stupid dual clutch gearbox and embrace the future. But neither is happening right now.
The future is no gearbox.
Oh, God. You're already getting smug. You're turning into one of those smug Tesla owners. You're not even an owner yet. This is going to be a long year or so when you first get that car.
It's not going to be this year.
Oh, thank God. All right. At least I have a few more months to raise my defenses and get prepared for this awfulness. Anyway,
I mean, we can talk about Mac Pros some more if you want, if that's better.
Oh God, please stop. Although I was thinking earlier today, actually, how ridiculous it is. You two fawned over this stupid trash can for like 15 episodes of ATP, and John never bought one, and Marco, you kicked it to the curb within like 6 months. I
suspect that my next computer will probably be a Mac Pro again, but because the difference now between like there was a good discussion about this with Serenity and John on this last week's episode of the talk show, about how like the Mac Pro right now is kind of like the best of almost nothing except for multi-core performance and things that use that second GPU somehow, which is basically only OpenCL stuff that can even use it. So there's a small number of things that are better on it, but there's a whole lot about it that the iMac beats it at, including for my purposes, including the screen quality for one, the fact that there is no good way to get 5K or large Retina on the Mac Pro. And so, if there's a new Mac Pro there's probably going to be one in like 4 or 5 months, but I probably won't get that one, but I would probably get the next one.
Wait, so you're saying if there's a Mac Pro that is released in the next year or so that supports Retina, you're not going to insta-buy it?
I'm not planning on it. I mean, with me, I can never really guarantee that as much as you guys.
Yeah, this is what I sounded like when I was like, oh, no, I'm totally not getting an Apple Watch, isn't it?
Or a BMW or an iPhone. Or
if they don't have a Retina screen, you're not going to get it.
Exactly.
You're not going to give up the Retina screen. So it doesn't matter if a Mac Pro is introduced. All we should be watching for is an external 5K screen release, because they're not going to release a screen unless something can drive it.
Exactly. And so I would like their, like, before I really do an update, I would like for there, first of all, to be a good performance increase on the CPU side. I think whatever they update to next, I forget what core they're up to in the Xeon line. And I might even, depending on if it comes soon, I'll probably skip it because I'm still very happy with my iMac. But I would like more parallel CPU power eventually, because I really do max it out like crazy when doing stuff to my new photos on my new camera, because they're just massive. But that's the only time I really destroy the CPUs. So I can wait. Aren't you happy you asked?
I've been watching the football game for the last 10 minutes. Were you talking?
Awesome. So anyway, while I'm talking and you're not listening, let's do an ad read.
Wait, hold on. No. Hold on. We never finished the talk about the trackpad. That's where all this started. That was Genesis.
Right. So, trackpads.
Yeah, so I have nothing else to add about this, but somebody had some other notes in the show notes about it. It wasn't me. I'm assuming it was John, who was also not paying attention because he's trying to buy Star Wars tickets again.
That's one of those days. No, I thought you had it handled, but yeah, I put this in the notes because of my question on this is, do any of you work this way? Have you worked this way, like mouse and trackpad at the same time?
I don't generally. However, because the only trackpad I have is on my, physically in the computer, attached to the computer. But I did notice a couple times, and I think it was getting a definition of a word the other day. I was at work and I'm on a client's site now, so I only have my onboard monitor. I'm not using my clamshell with two identical externals like I was at our office. So anyway, so I had my keyboard open and obviously the trackpad's right there. And I was trying to get a definition of a word and I force touched in order to get the definition rather than like right clicking and going to define or what have you. And it took me aback because I didn't even really think twice about it. I just reached for the trackpad and did it with my left hand. And I was like, wait a second, that was weird. And it was kind of nice, but I don't know. I can't fathom getting an external Magic Trackpad in addition to a Magic Mouse, in no small part because they are damned expensive. It is really stunningly expensive. What are they, $130, I believe?
Well, why is everyone saying that's super expensive, though? I've seen a lot of complaints about the Magic Trackpad being... We didn't mention it in the last show, but I've seen a lot of people saying $130 for the trackpad. That seems outrageous. Now, obviously, it's more than my like $19 plastic Logitech mouse from 1995 that I've been using forever. But I wouldn't flinch at spending $100 on a really good mouse. So why is it that this is a big deal at $100? Is it because you'd see it as just a flat thing that doesn't move, and it seems like, how am I paying $130 for a flat thing that doesn't move? I mean, it's
no. It's because of what you just said. Because I'm used to paying like $20 for a mouse. My Magic Mouse that I bought way back when was probably $60. I think it was something like $70. The original Magic Mouse, and I thought that was silly expensive. I don't know. I think it just seems like a lot of damn money. $130 for a mouse, for a freaking mouse.
Well, for a trackpad, but still. So, the fact is, high-end mice have always cost in the $100 range, right? Like the Logitech MX Master, that's $100, isn't it?
I don't recall, but I do remember vividly looking at it when Mike had said that it does a lot of the stuff that I do with swipes on the Magic Mouse and thinking to myself, man, I really would love something that doesn't look like a piece of sushi. And I looked at it and I was going to buy it. And then I saw whatever the price was, apparently between $70 and $100, depending on where you buy it. And I remember looking at it and thinking, that's way too much damn money for a mouse. No way.
But why is it so much? Like, I don't understand why people think that's a lot of money. Like, the Razer gaming mice are probably similarly priced. Like, this brings me a good point to pull this thing that's been in the post-show section for God knows how long. The Xbox Elite controller, which you should all follow the link to right now. You guys see it up on the top for some reason in the post-show thing. This makes a lot of sense to me. This is an Xbox controller. I believe it's $150.
Wow.
It more or less looks like the regular Xbox controller, but they put more money into it. It's sturdier. It's more customizable. It has higher quality materials. It has better tolerances. I'm sure it feels better to use. It's also got some extra weird triggers on the bottom, so you can use different button pressing arrangements. It's like a premium controller. It's for a controller, like a mouse and like a keyboard, is something that when you're using the thing, your hands are on almost all the time, and for a controller, pretty much all the time. And they try to make them as sturdy as they can make them and keep them as cheap as possible to bundle them in with the game consoles. And then they're usually like maybe $40 to $60 to buy another one, which is kind of expensive, but these things do have Bluetooth. They do have a lot of buttons. Sometimes they have lights on them and microphones and all sorts of other stuff. And I'm willing to buy a fancier version of basically every controller that I have. By all means, double the price of the controller and put 25% more value of parts into it. So obviously your margins go up for the expensive controller, but I'm getting 25% better. Like, take that money and put it towards, because it's got the same buttons as everything else. This one has the extra things on the bottom, but put it towards making the buttons sturdier or feel better, or improving the materials, or making them not wear out as much, or not using hardier bushings or surface, things that rub together. Whatever they're going to do to it, make it more expensive. And I think that is an incredibly smart purchase. It's the same reason you should buy a really good expensive chair, the best one you can find, keyboard, mouse, all this stuff. If you're going to sit in it all day and touch it all day with your hands, that's where you should spend your money. So now the Magic Trackpad isn't quite the same thing, because really, like, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there, right? So maybe 130 is too much for that, because people feel like it is not that much better than the old Magic Trackpad, in that, again, it's just a little surface. It's a little bit bigger, has slightly nicer materials. It supports Force Touch, whatever. But at the bottom line, all people see is like a flat slab that lays on the ground that you put your finger on. But it doesn't seem that crazy to me. Now, maybe it's overpriced in that there's no lower price model. In the case of the Xbox Elite controller or fancy keyboards or fancy chairs, you can get less expensive ones that are still pretty good. Whereas the Apple external desktop trackpad that's not $130 for people who want a trackpad but really don't want to spend $130 on one because they're on a budget. That's where I can see the criticism. But this specific product saying this isn't worth $130 because Apple's margins must be crazy doesn't really bother me that much.
It's not that it's not worth $130. It's just, I feel like whatever my barrier for a mouse or mouse-like device is, this is on the other side of that barrier. And what you just said makes perfect sense to me. I'm touching this constantly. This is how I'm making my living, is by using a mouse and a keyboard and sitting on a chair and so on. All of that makes perfect sense. You're absolutely right. But I don't know, just I look at these prices, and as soon as I get much past like $60, $70, I just feel like it's just too damn much. The rent is just too damn high.
But how often do you buy new input devices? Like, I mean, people can justify spending $100 for an extra, few gigs of memory on their iPhone, with barely even thinking about it often. But then, an input device that you probably buy like once every 5 years at most. Like how often do people buy these things, new by themselves? I think it's pretty rare. And so, this is a high-end premium device. This is not a mass-market device. Most people are not buying desktops to begin with. Those who are buying desktops are generally going to be using whatever comes with it, and by default it comes with the mouse. And those who are going to be, willing to pay extra for, this premium trackpad thing, like that's kind of an upscale premium thing in that market. I don't think it's a high volume product. I don't think Apple probably makes or sells a whole ton of them. I'm honestly surprised they updated it at all. As I mentioned like last show, I'm surprised that the desktop input devices got any attention from Apple, given how relatively unimportant they are in Apple's overall market. But I don't think it's that ridiculous. I mean, it's a premium mechanical keyboard is going to cost you between $100 and $200 usually. I don't think it's that crazy to have this trackpad from Apple, which is a premium brand now. It's a fashion brand. I don't think it's that ridiculous to have this coming from them, doing things that no other trackpad can do, at least on a Mac, possibly anywhere. Offering that for $130 that somebody's going to buy once every 5 years. That doesn't seem crazy to me at all.
So a couple thoughts about this. First of all, I don't know when I bought this Magic Mouse, but I can assure you it was shortly after it was initially released, and it's the same damn one I've been using for like easily 5 years. So there's that. But secondly, you're both trying to use logic to fight with my emotions, and And you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. Everything you both said, absolutely right. But all I can tell you is I look at these price tags and I'm like, holy God, it's too much money, damn it. And it's just because it's what I feel. It's the same reason that I look at a piece of software on the App Store, and if it's, north of $5, I think, whoa. Is this something I really want? And I shouldn't think that way.
Please don't get into this.
No, I know. And I'm not saying that because I'm proud of this. I'm not saying that because I think it's the right approach. I'm just saying that's how I feel. And then I remind myself, oh my God, this is like $6 or $7, and it's going to give me plenty of enjoyment for a long time. Like when Tweetbot whatever came out, and it was what, $5 for Tweetbot 2?
4 and yes, $5.
Yeah. So for a split second, I was like, wow, not that I wouldn't do it, but I was like, Jesus, no, it's not, you idiot. You use that app constantly every single day. What are you doing even thinking that $5 is too much money? But that's logic talking to the emotional side of my brain, which initially was like, wow, $5 for an app, really? And I'm wrong. I'm not arguing that I'm right. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm wrong. But it's just it's that gut reaction. And when I see $130 or anything north of $80 for a pointing device, I'm just like, wow, that's a lot of money.
So on the other side of this, the other reason this is in here, like I said, is the setting aside the price of the trackpad, is the concept of people who either have become accustomed to or were brought up in the age of trackpads and mice and keyboards, adopting a desktop computer usage pattern that involves them all. So in the same way that I grew up with a mouse, my way of using computers was alien to the people who were, teenagers or adults when I was first getting my Mac. Their way of using computers was the keyboard. You sit in front of the keyboard, and that's how you use a computer. Keyboard. There is nothing else. I was always from day one of the Mac, mouse and keyboard. Sometimes just the mouse, sometimes just the keyboard, but very often both at once. Command clicking to clean up icons on the desktop, shift clicking, option clicking, the whole 9 yards. Clicking, typing, switching back and forth between them, doing them both simultaneously, using shortcut keys in graphics programs while you're drawing with the mouse and switching tools with the keyboard. All of those things are second nature to me because that's how I was brought up. Now that we have trackpads, especially on the desktop, I can imagine there being people who get into a groove of one hand on the mouse, one hand on the keyboard or trackpad, where you're mousing around, and this Toby wrote in to say this is the two things that he uses a trackpad for, while also using the mouse, is swiping between spaces and swiping between launchpad pages. Why bother? Why don't you just click on the little things to take you to the next launchpad? It's faster and more natural to do it the other way. And what is your other hand doing anyway? It's not like being ambidextrous. It's just like accepting that there are a bunch of places that you can give input to your computer, and not saying, well, I can only be using one of those at once, or I can only be using two of those at once because one of them didn't exist when I was growing up. And I feel like it almost makes me want to take down my Magic Trackpad, because I have one too. Like I said, I got it for OS X review so I could do all the gestures, to try to find a place for it to see if I could integrate it into my life. Maybe, it can't teach an old dog new tricks. Maybe it's too late for me, but I like the idea of younger or more flexible people using all forms of input simultaneously, without being constrained by because desktop computers didn't used to have a trackpad, therefore there's no place for a trackpad in my computing life. So not that I'm going to run out and buy one of these trackpads, but I am kind of fascinated by that idea, and I may try bringing my thing down from the shelf and trying to find a place for it on my keyboard tray here.
I love that both of you always get up my butt about how I buy everything that Apple makes, and I'm always buying everything. Meanwhile, I'm the only one here not even tempted a little bit by the trackpad, because I just know I wouldn't use it.
Well, we'll see what actually happens. There's the talking about it, and there's the buying. And the buying is you just bought a new iMac, and you bought a Mac Pro, and you bought a new iPhone, and so you're ahead on the actual buying.
I never bought the last trackpad. That's been around for years.
Well, the only reason I bought it was I bought it used on eBay. The only reason I bought it was I had to for OS X reviews, because I did the trackpad on my ancient non-unibody Mac does not do the gestures. You remember when they introduced the gestures and everything? I couldn't actually do them. I didn't have review hardware from Apple, and I didn't have anything else, so I had to eBay a Magic Trackpad.
I can't believe you bought a trackpad used.
Yeah, I can't get over that either. I thought the exact same thing.
It was in very good condition. It did not smell like smoke.
But did you
And I cleaned it after I got it.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about the cleaning procedure you put that poor trackpad through.
Man's assumption, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a miracle that thing worked after you surely dismantled it in order to clean the insides that you would never have ever touched.
Is it man's assumption or man's conjecture? Now I'm feeling doubtful. Neither one of you knows, because you're useless.
Our first sponsor this week is Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website, portfolio, or online store. For a free trial and 10% off, visit squarespace.com and enter offer code ATP at checkout. Squarespace is simple and powerful with intuitive, easy-to-use tools to make your website. It comes with tons of beautiful designs to choose from, and sites look professionally designed regardless of your skill level with no coding required. You can customize these designs to whatever you want your site to look like. You can change, things like fonts, colors, even layouts, what's displayed where. You can change a lot with these beautiful templates. They're all responsive, so they work well on every device, every screen size. You don't have to worry about it. If you want, you can just, use the graphical editors, do things very easily regardless of your skill level, or you can actually inject custom HTML and JavaScript and CSS if you want to. If you're an advanced user, if you're a developer, you can actually just inject your own code and do whatever you want to the layout. If you want to sell things, physical or digital goods, all that is built in at no additional charge. They offer 24/7 support via live chat and email. All of this is powered by state-of-the-art technology to ensure stability and security. No matter what kind of load you get, no matter what kind of hacking is going around, they got you covered. Squarespace is trusted by millions of people and some of the most respected brands in the world. All of this starts at just $8 a month, and you get a free domain if you sign up for a whole year up front. Now, Squarespace, trust me, people, you probably need Squarespace for something in your life. And if you don't need it right now, I bet you know somebody who does. They have free trials, no credit card required. Check it out, see if it works for you. I bet whatever your next project is, or if you know somebody who needs to make a website for something, I bet it works just fine, and then you're done. You don't have to do anything else. You can be done with it in a couple of hours. You can have your entire site done for just $8 a month and move on with your life. Do anything else. Do your business. Do your projects. Do your other hobbies. Make another website. Doesn't matter. You can do all that with Squarespace so easily, so quickly. Start your free trial today with no credit card required at squarespace.com. When you decide to sign up, use offer code ATP to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace, build it beautiful.
Do you want to talk more about this new iMac?
Well, I put this last thing in here because it was supposed to be for last week. Maybe it's follow-up, but I don't know. It's more of the same topic. And a lot of other people pointed this out, but I thought it was worth hammering them one more time in the 5400 RPM drive. So Apple put up a website at apple.com/iMac/then-and-now that says, hey, let's compare the original iMac, that iconic computer from yesteryear, with the new one just to see how far we've come. And they go 62,000 times faster graphics at 14 million more pixels, 1,000 times more RAM, 750 times more storage, 366 times more processing power. But I'm pretty sure the hard drive in the original iMac was also 5400 RPM. So I would like the last number that scrolls by on this little web page to be 1x more speed on the spindle. And a couple of people pointed me to, I think it was like Other World Computing articles, and saying, oh, it's not, even though the RPM is the same, the storage density is so massively increased that the bandwidth is higher. I agree with that. Like I said last show, if you come from a spinning disk and you get another spinning disk computer, this spinning disk will be faster than your old spinning disk just as hard drive technology gets better, right? Setting aside the storage density, which is going to give you higher, throughput for how many megabytes a second can you pull off the disk, I'm sure the seek times are potentially better as well. Or lots of things about a modern hard drive are better than the big clunker that was in the original iMac. But this is the reason I put this in there is because this is the meta argument about the 16 gigabytes of memory in the iPhone and how much RAM Apple used to put in the computers. It's not so much the absolute number that kind of galls the technology enthusiasts so much. It's like whatever numbers you come up with, whatever numbers you pick, whatever you field a line of products with a set of parameters in them. The only thing I'm looking for is over time, make that number go up. And that's kind of what this whole website is about. Look how these numbers have gone up. And on the long term, yeah, it does go up. Look how much better we've done since 1998. Good job, guys. 1998, 2015, you made great advancements, right? But 1, 2, 3 years in a row with the same bottom storage tier on your phones is too much because it feels like, where's the progress? Why are you holding steady at the 3 year ago levels? Has really nothing changed since 3 years? Is everything else exactly the same? Or are we making bigger pictures? Are we making bigger videos? Are the application sizes increasing? All these things that change, can we not get more storage for the same price? We want to see progress. And this is the most grating thing for me about Apple, because I'm so gung-ho and progress, is that whatever numbers you pick, please just let me see progress in them. And it doesn't have to be every single month, or every single 6 months. And even maybe I'll give you a pass in every single year if the previous year you were above you seem to be generous. But if time passes and a stat doesn't change, that's bad. And that's why the 5400 RPM hard drive is like, seriously? I remember purposely trying to avoid 5400 RPM hard drives on laptops I bought well before the unibody era, right? Because it's like, oh, you want to get the fast hard drive, get the 7200 RPM one, right? It feels like going back in time. It's like, we should be making meaningful progress, and we are everywhere else. Everywhere else is SSD. Wow, what amazing progress. Great, spread that across your entire line, except for these thinkers at the bottom, which, by the way, I think no one sent this theory in, but it occurred to me after the show last week that the only reason for the bottom of the line Retina iMac is to get people in the door, kind of like the cars that you advertise in the paper just to get them into the dealership. But you never actually saw anyone in that car. It's like, oh, and Retina starts at 1500, but not really, because you should never buy the 1500 one. You're always going to buy. You always have to get the option for whatever, the option that actually gives you a transmission or whatever option they have. That if you want seats, then you have to pay you have to get the convenience package for $800. So that could be another potential reason that they're trying to hit a price point to get people into the Retina line. Like once they start considering, well, this is a non-Retina, but look at this screen. Isn't it nice? And you can get into this one for only $1,500, but no one should go out the door with a $1,500 model. So let me start selling you some options. That's another possibility. I don't know if that's the case. But anyway, I just thought the Then and Now site was like Apple highlighting the worst feature of its new line of Retina iMacs unintentionally.
Awesome.
Nice. I actually, in my deep thoughts that I had earlier today, apparently I had a lot of time to think earlier today. I was thinking again about, whenever it is I upgrade my personal machine, what should I get? And we talked about this over a few episodes back. And I was thinking again, maybe the right answer is an iMac. And maybe the right answer is I just get a 5K iMac. And the thing that made me stop.
I can sell you mine.
There we go. At least you're honest. Now we're getting to real talk.
Wait till the next Mac Pro comes out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the most real of real talk. Anyway, it occurred to me that the problem I have with an iMac is that I oftentimes work from home, as we talked about, and when I do work from home, I want to be able to plug in to an external monitor. I am one of those people who works much better with two monitors, or at least more than just the 15-inch monitor I have, built into the computer. And I don't really care that there isn't a target display mode or whatever it's called, but in this case, it would have made the conversation with myself a little bit different if I knew I could plug my Mac into that screen. Even if I couldn't get Retina resolutions, even if it was just scaled or something, that would make it a much more compelling option. Because otherwise, I'm never really going to be able to plug into an external monitor, or I'm going to have a second monitor sitting next to this 27-inch behemoth on my desk, which I really don't want. And so I don't know what to do. And I know that we talked about this before, and I didn't know what to do then, and I still don't know what to do now. But the fact that I was really thinking about, well, how can I make an iMac work, was weird for me. In the same way that the same way I was thinking about, man, maybe I should try to make a trackpad work for me. That was another weird thought for me, because I've never been interested in desktop Macs or computers of any sort since college. I've never been interested in trackpads. I use them because I have to, not because I want to. TrackPoint for life. So I've been having a bit of an identity crisis with regard to my computing preferences over the last 24 hours.
Have you considered the iPad Pro?
No, not really. Why?
I don't know. You're considering. You seem to be open to all options.
No, let's not get crazy.
I'm standing in for Vitici saying, the iPad, it's really big. You can split the screen now.
Yeah, no. Let's not talk crazy talk. Although I did briefly consider an iPad Air 2 as opposed to my beloved Mini whenever I upgrade that, and that was also an odd thought. I don't know, just weird times in my noggin these days, gentlemen. Weird times.
You guys are so much worse than me.
But different. It's not worse. It's different. You just buy everything and get rid of it instantly, including businesses.
At least I'm consistent.
but yes, at least you are consistent. Both of us actually, although perhaps me more vocally, hem and haw for 3 years, and then eventually get something that we should have bought 3 years prior.
No, I know what I'm waiting for the computer, and like I said, I'm probably going to get one of these iMacs. It'll be my wife's computer, not mine. I'm just waiting to see, I'm basically waiting to decide which GPU I should get. Is it worth it to get the big one? Is the big one much hotter than the other one? Is it a waste to get the big one because it gets thermal throttle all the time, so you might as well get the cheapest, smallest, coolest one because the gaming performance is going to be crap either way? I just want to see benchmarks and numbers and noise stuff, and wait for everyone else to get the lemons off the assembly line, and then I'll buy one.
I mean, for whatever it's worth, like, I haven't used the new one yet, but I imagine, I know it's the same thermal design as the old one. Maybe the actual thermal load might be different, but in general, gaming on a 5K iMac works fine, but is loud. That's it. Like the fan is loud when gaming.
Yeah, I don't think anything could be louder than my 13-inch MacBook Air that my kids play Minecraft on. Sesame. It sounds. I mean, I don't know how much noise the little tiny 13-inch Air can make, but like it is at max speed and max volume, and it's not that loud because the Air is such a tiny machine. But it sounds like it's being hurt the whole time. It's amazing this machine hasn't died. Like they just sit in front of Minecraft for hours and just sounds like a tiny little hairdryer behind there going all the time.
No, it is not that bad at all. But it is, it's exactly the same thing with their like asymmetrical blades on the 15 Retina. It's like it sounds more pleasant of a tone, but it's still just as loud, basically.
Yeah. Anyway, like I feel bad for them because there's the 27-inch non-Retina, but still 27-inch monitor attached to that little 13-inch Air. And they play Minecraft full screen at native res, and they get like 12 frames a second. They don't know what they're missing, I think. But boy, I look at it and I'm like, I don't know how they tolerate it. I guess it's what they're used to. Like, well, I guess this is what Minecraft is like on a computer. Like, it's faster on their iPads. The iPad 2 runs Minecraft Pocket Edition at a higher frame rate, much higher frame rate than this MacBook Air runs on this 27-inch screen.
Goodness. All right, so what else do we have going on? We have something called Marco's Pet Topic.
Hey, you skipped a bunch of things. I'm not done with peripherals on the iMac.
Oh, God, it's like follow-up that's not follow-up. Okay, carry on.
Well, I bet it's a topic. Yeah, it was things we didn't mention last time. We didn't mention last time that the keyboard and trackpad work if they're plugged in, even if you have Bluetooth off. So in theory, you could buy this keyboard and trackpad and connect them to a computer that does not have Bluetooth. Because even though they are Bluetooth peripherals and they charge through a lightning port that connects to USB at the other end, theoretically, you could buy a computer with either broken Bluetooth or no Bluetooth at all and still plug these things in and use them. And since the trackpad and the keyboard don't move, you don't have to worry about fraying the ends of the lightning cable by wiggling it back and forth. And that brings up the other topic that's not in here of theories about why the charging port is on the bottom of the mouse, which we talked about last time. And, I was willing to say aesthetics explains it 100%. But other people have theories like, well, if you put the plug like where you would expect the cable to connect, aside from it being ugly, it would encourage people to keep it plugged in all the time and use it like that. And then that would inevitably fray the lightning cable, which is not meant to be yanked around like that, or the connector would start wiggling or whatever. So by putting it on the bottom, you assure that it is impossible to use it when it is plugged in, and then therefore no one will use it when it's plugged in. That makes some sense. I still think aesthetics is Occam's razor. It is the obvious solution. It is the easiest solution. It explains that entirely.
Yeah, I guarantee you that was the reason. It was not because of the cable fraying questions. No, not at all. The reason was it looks better.
Or the idea that people would accidentally use it. Like, they understand they're buying a wireless mouse. Once they realize it can work with that, someone would probably use it plugged in. I don't doubt that because people will do all sorts of things. But in general, I don't think it's like because people would be confused or anything like that. On the other side, like I said last week, doing it for aesthetic reasons makes so much sense, except for the fact that when you charge it, it is almost impossible to make it aesthetically pleasing while charging. And charging is a very infrequent occurrence, but it's always going to look like you've harpooned a turtle, and it's in the throes of death or already dead when you charge it. It just doesn't look good. It's not a good look. There is no way, like, Johnny Ive's elegant desk with everything cleared off of it and his minimalist setup with his beautiful Apple peripherals that look like a piece of sushi. And then he's got to charge his mouse, and there's just no way to make that look good. Maybe it's like, hanging a lantern on it in movie script parlance. So like, we have this thing that's a problem. Let's say, yes, this seriously is a problem. There is no way to make this look good when charging. Guess what? Your mouse is dead. It was harpooned by a lightning cable.
Well, this leads in very well to my pet topic. If you want to go right into that.
Yes, but before we do, you should tell us about something that's awesome.
Well, John still has to tell us about Apple's mouse click sounds concerns.
Isn't that part of your thing though? Yeah. So this was a link to who did this one? I got to look at it. It was Stephen Levy, right?
Yeah.
He got access to Apple's input peripherals lab, basically, where they work up the mouse and keyboards and everything. They're talking with the engineers, and they're all serious about everything. Like, we really sweat the details, and they told him a big story about how the click sound of the new mouse wasn't quite right, and they had to figure out why it didn't sound right, and adjust the little feet that touched the bottom, and they angled the feet differently to make the resonance of the click sound better until they got the click just right, and it talks about sweating the details. And a lot of people pointed out, like, that's all well and good. I love that you sweat the details on how nice the mouse click sounds, but you may be missing the forest for the trees, and that a lot of people would say that the shape is not particularly ergonomic for the class of people who want to rest their entire hand on the mouse. But I still say that's a categorical, like, how you grip the mouse thing. And B, you're really concentrating on that, but everyone's okay with the speared turtle charging thing. Like, they really sweat the details, except for this detail, because they say, you know what? I don't care what it looks like when it's charging. Have it look as ugly and stupid and awkward as you want. That is detail we are not sweating. It's just fine. Just forget it, right? So the detail they're sweating, obviously, and it makes kind of sense. You click the mouse all the time. You want it to be satisfying and feel good. You charge the mouse very infrequently. It's okay for that to just be a total disaster, I guess.
Our second sponsor this week is Automatic. Automatic is a connected car adapter that plugs into your car's diagnostic port, and it integrates with over 20 different apps to give you a better driving experience. Go to automatic.com/ATP to see for yourself and get 20% off. Now, Automatic, this is a cool little thing. You plug it into your OBD2 port. You pair it with an Automatic app for iPhone or Android, and then this helps you out in several ways. So first of all, simple stuff. If your check engine light comes on, this is in the diagnostic port, so it can read that. It'll tell you exactly what's wrong. So any kind of engine error code that your car throws, you can see what it means on Automatic, and some of them you can even just clear it. Like, if the code is something that's temporary, like your gas door is open, you can just close it and then go to Automatic and have it reset the code. Problem solved. You don't have to go to a mechanic or anything like that. Also, it has access to all the data that your car has about all the systems are working, how quickly you're driving, where you are going. You know, with your phone, it has GPS. So the combination of those things can do things like, if you have an accident, it can automatically call for help. It can also do simpler things, like it can give you a log of your fuel efficiency and how you've been driving, where you've been driving. It can give you your parking location, so you never lose your car in a big parking lot. So much stuff like that. And they also now have, fairly recently, they added apps. And so they have a whole SDK now. So if you're a developer, there's a whole API. It's a nice, simple REST API. They have this whole rich API that you can build apps against. So they have all sorts of apps already, things like Concur for expense reports, FreshBooks for invoices, Pebble Watches have integration for parking locations and stuff like that. They also have integration with IFTTT, if this then that, which gives you the power to build all kinds of useful recipes based on your driving or various events that happen with you in your car. Like, you can trigger things to happen when you're getting close to home, such as turning on your Nest thermostat, all sorts of stuff you can do with the Automatic API. Get Automatic today, and normally it's $100, and this is great because it's a flat price. There is no monthly fee to use this. You just buy the Automatic device up front, and that's it. You have it. You own it. It just works after that. There is no monthly fee. You just buy the device. Now, it's normally $100, and it's free shipping in 2 business days with a 45-day return policy. And there's a special for our listeners. If you go to automatic.com/ATP, you get 20% off in addition to that. So it's just $80, free shipping, 45-day return policy. Check it out, automatic.com/ATP. Thanks a lot.
All right, so tell us about this pet topic of yours.
So this is I was kind of inspired by this iMac stuff, what John was saying, like the being concerned about the detail of how it looks when it's not plugged in, and then the ridiculousness of how the mouse looks when it is plugged in, and how you can't use it while charging and everything. And then so we got an email from Florian Kuhnlens, and he said, for me, the new Magic Peripherals discussion left me the impression that Apple's laser focus might be a bit too focused. They care about the sound of the mouse, but not the weird charging port position, or at least not enough to change it. Meanwhile, it would make a lot of sense being able to use the mouse wired only, like the other 2 new peripherals. Similar with the iMac and the 5400 RPM hard drive, why give it the super screen but not a good drive? Same with the iPhone and 16 gig and so on. And so, for me, so that's end email. I think this is a bigger discussion that I've kind of alluded to for a while, but I think it's worth diving into here because these all are relevant. Apple, we all like to think that Apple always does things that are best for usability, and the fact is that is not true now, and that really has never been true. Usability has always kind of been balanced between appearance and profitability, for lack of a better word. And it's kind of this tight balance that Apple has had to walk. If usefulness and usability and good engineering-wise things being awesome If those were the top priorities, regardless of how it would look or how profitable it would be, Apple stuff would be like, it would be more like the PC market. We have that in the market. We see what that is like, and it's a very low profit business. It's very badly differentiated or minimally differentiated, and it's not that great. And so and also, like, people like us who kind of care about how things look a little bit, like, we like to think that we are objective because we're geeks, and we like to think like, oh, it doesn't matter how it looks, I'll just get the one that functions best. But
wait, who thinks that? None of us do.
Okay, so good. So in many cases, people really do care what it looks like. So looks are important. Anyway, I can look at almost any Apple product, and I can point out ways in which appearance, or the overall visual appeal, just appearance, has trumped usefulness or real world use. Like John pointing out that the mouse, like when you charge it, like that, it looks ridiculous when you have to charge it like on its back or on its side diagonally, like whatever it is, it looks ridiculous, right? In reality, Apple worked so hard to make the iPhone look super thin and be super small and look great, but almost every iPhone I see in the wild is in some kind of crappy case, because the iPhone is, either it's a case for durability, which is most of the time, or for better grip, because the phones themselves aren't durable enough and don't offer good enough grip, or it's a case that's a battery case, because the phones don't offer good enough battery life for people. So it's like there's always these trade-offs that Apple makes for good looks. Similar thing with the iPhone 6 design. Why is the sleep wake button directly across from the volume up button, which makes it very hard to hit just one of them without hitting the other one accidentally? The reason, most likely, is because it looks better. It is visually symmetrical on that level, and so it looks better than offsetting those buttons at all, or by having the sleep wake button be like in the middle or still on top or whatever. It looked better that way. That might not be the only reason it's there, but it's probably the biggest reason it's there.
I don't think looks is the reason for the sleep wake button at all. I think looks is the reason that the tops are aligned exactly, but I don't think there's any place you could put that is better than opposite the volume buttons, unfortunately, because top is too high, and once you slide either the volume buttons or the power button down, they become much more awkward to reach.
Well, then, so even if it was like centered between the two rather than aligned with the top one,
you think that would help?
Yeah, I do actually. I think it still wouldn't be ideal, but I think it would be easier to hit just one of them if they weren't exactly aligned.
Maybe. Anyway, that would still be aesthetically aligned because it would be exactly centered between the two volume buttons.
Yeah, but I'm sure somebody was like, no, it looks better like this, and that's why. Anyway, so
your other arguments are stronger. Well, I think your arguments got weaker as you went on, as in weaker is defined by whether I agree with you or not.
Sure, okay, but let's go. There's even with the new stuff like the iPad Pro, I called out, and many people did. One of the big problems with the iPad Pro that people are going to have in practice is that there's nowhere on it to put the pencil. Like, if you have a pencil, there is nowhere on the iPad, even if you buy the big keyboard case, it like there's no slot for the pencil. And part of that is because it's super thin. There's nowhere it's just not thick enough to have a slot. The pencil, by the way, which, as CGP Grey pointed out on Cortex, the pencil which is perfectly round and can roll away because that looks better.
Did you see the person who, I forget who was, who posted a picture of the Surface, the stylus for the Surface 4? It's shaped like a pencil. And the Apple Pencil is shaped like a pen.
Exactly. Anyway, so there's issues with that. Where at least make for the keyboard case, at least make a hole, because there's going to be a million third-party iPad cases that are going to have pen holes in them because that's what people actually need if they're gonna have the iPad Pencil. But it'd be great if Apple made them, and because Apple's cases are generally pretty nice. So anyway,
they should attach it with a chain like at the banks, like one of those little metal chains, just so no one walks away with it, and you could have the metal thing just clunking around as you try to write. That'd be great.
Right. Obviously, the new MacBook One, that has a lot of these trade-offs for thinness because it looks nicer. And, as I've ranted many times before, I think the keyboard and the trackpad both suffer from that, from this trade-off just to make it look thinner. But, again, the MacBook, like, how many people go buy MacBooks because they are, they kind of inspire lust, like when you touch one, when you see one, it's like, my God, that's amazing. So it does work. The iMac is a curious case of this, because like the iMac and the Mac Pro, you could look at all these things. The iMac is really, really thin, and if they would be willing to make it thicker, even just the thickness it used to be, you'd be able to do a lot of things that would be very nice. You could, for instance, the 21-inch model could use 3.5-inch hard drives again, which would make them faster and cheaper and larger. You could, if it was thicker, you could have a kind of more robust cooling solution so that you could have the fans that don't spin as fast under high load. So like the Mac Pro has that one giant fan, which is awesome because you can stress out a Mac Pro like crazy and you will not hear it. No matter what it's doing, you will not hear it. The iMac is much more designed like a laptop, and because it's so super thin, it kind of has to be. So the iMac is, I think it's one main fan in the middle or something like that. But anyway, it's like it has to spin really fast under very heavy CPU and GPU loads, and it's very loud as a result. And if they'd be willing to make the enclosure thicker, they could have larger, slower fans in there that could have the same degree of cooling. But they don't, because it looks better when it's thin from the side. Which, like, I'm looking at this 5K iMac on my desk. If it was 3 inches thicker, I would never notice, because I would never see it, because I'm looking at it head on and it's against a wall. Like, it doesn't matter.
But when it's on the reception desk at a fancy office, people do see the back of it.
Yeah, but even then, like, do they really care? So, but yeah, like, that's why they do it, and it looks nice in their press shots, and they like saying how thin it is, even though it's only that thin on the edge. But oh well. Oh, and also with the iMac, one of my biggest complaints about the iMac is that the stand is too low. If you actually want to have an ergonomically correct setup with an iMac or an Apple Cinema display, you have to like put it on a book or something. You have to lift it up by about 3 inches.
What is yours on?
Mine is on I believe it's called the Elevation Stand.
I thought you had it on top of one of your weird, expensive German amplifiers.
I used to, because those are also the exact right height. But now I move those to the left and right because they're holding speakers up for anyway. So I have an Elevation Stand from Elevation Lab, which is pretty perfect.
Yeah, all of Apple's monitors and iMacs have always been too low. I have mine on a stand too. My stand that isn't even high enough. I have like a clear piece of Lexan that's kind of curved in a U shape.
Right.
And
yeah.
I wish it could be higher still. I kind of bought it thinking, well, I'm surely going to replace this 23-inch monitor as soon as they come out with a big 27-inch one or whatever. And I just never bought one, so now it's just been too low for a long time. But yeah, you're right. All of their stands are too low, which, I mean, the solution that other monitor makers do, like Dell or NEC or Asus or whatever, they make adjustable height stands, like especially on the fancier models. And adjustable height stands just all look gross and don't feel good to use. And you know what I mean? Like, and Apple wouldn't do that because making a very good adjustable height stand would be really expensive, and making a cruddy one makes them feel bad about their products. So they don't. So it's a single contiguous piece of bent aluminum with a little hole for the cables to come out of, and that's it.
And even then, like, obviously in all of their photos of it, there's no cables plugged into any of their products, because cables are ugly. But again, like, in the reality of somebody using these Apple products is usually uglier and clunkier than the way they're presented, and because it looks gross. And I can't really blame them for that, but I do wish that their designs would consider it more. And I think it seems like over time, the reason I bring all this up, the reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight, is that it does seem like over time, the balance between what is the best overall product versus what looks the best versus what's most profitable, I feel like the best overall product side of that triangle has been losing a little too much recently. That in seeking out higher average selling prices, more upsells, more profit, and also I think, I don't know how the internal politics work, but it does seem like the most powerful person in the company is Johnny Ive. From the outside, that's how it looks to me. It seems like he can do basically whatever he wants, and that anything he says just goes. Because Steve was so involved in product and design, I'm guessing Steve and Johnny had a really nice balance going that Tim and Johnny just can't have, because Tim is not the same kind of person. He's not really in that role as much, and so I think now Johnny has so much power, and it's going less checked, or possibly even unchecked. And so what we're seeing now is the Johnny and Tim sides get really strong. Of, like, if you think about Tim as like the profitability side, right? Apple is nailing the profitability. Johnny is making these beautiful looking objects, but it seems like that advocate for keeping the product in check was Steve, and that role is now just kind of, it's falling to other people, but none of them are as, maybe it's power, maybe it's just, high ranking, whatever it is. None of them are exerting as much influence, it seems, over the product line the way Steve did and could. versus Johnny and Tim, who are like, if you think about Johnny as wanting the beautiful things and Tim as wanting the profitability, which those are probably oversimplifications, but those are clearly like kind of where their strengths have lied in the past. If you look at that, it does seem like there's this kind of vacuum where Steve used to be in keeping the product stuff in better balance with those two factors.
I don't know. I would put Steve in the camp that's just as extreme in terms of wanting to remove everything. And it seemed to me, because every time you talked, saw an interview with Steve Jobs, it always seemed like what he really wanted was to get rid of all this crap. Like what he really wanted was essentially was the iPad, right? Can we just get rid of all this crap? I don't want any ports. I don't want any expansion slots. I just want it to be like a beautiful single piece obelisk that has no features on it whatsoever, but is a computing device. Like, I mean, he's the guy who made the Power Mac G4 Cube, for crying out loud. Like, he wanted to get rid of it all, hide it, get rid of it all. And yet, even in the Cube, did he make the Cube with no FireWire ports, with no connections for a keyboard, with everything wireless? No, because he couldn't do that yet. And so I definitely feel like if he was still around, not that it matters, but anyway, he would be on the side of get rid of everything. And in that vein, like the idea of getting rid of everything, the little triangle that you sketched out between, I forget what it was, like profitability, does it look nice, and is it a good overall product or whatever?
Yeah, basically.
There is a little bit of overlap there, because when I look at the products they're making these days, aside from thinking that Steve Jobs would be totally gung-ho and removing every single port and every single feature and just making them have nothing and just removing all choice because it's just, you shouldn't need that crap and it's annoying, there is something to be said for, whether intentionally or accidentally, and I think it is mostly intentionally, doing stuff like removing the number of possible moving parts, reducing the number of joints, fewer parts, fewer joints, fewer moving things, fewer ports, fewer holes, simpler, smaller, less stuff. That does actually make a better product. And aggressively pursuing that can get you, it's not like a smooth gradient of like, well, it was, more ports are good, but fewer ports is fewer things to break. Apple seems to always be looking for the next kind of discontinuity or step jump where it's like, well, if we remove, it could be argued that the iPhone or the iPad like that. If we remove everything about computers, we give you a little handheld computer that we call a smartphone, and we remove everything about it. No Finder, no file system, no installing your own apps, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're looking for that in hardware design too. Now, are they successful? Do they make products that people appreciate? Oh, it's great. It only has one port. See how that's better than two? Because one is fewer than two and it's less things to break and it's simpler and blah, blah, blah. I think they blow it a lot. But it seems to me what they're going for all the time is to try to make it simpler. And that instinct is mostly a good instinct. It's just like what you're putting in the axis of like, is this a better product? It's judging it by the criteria of like kind of, is it useful for me in the same way that the previous Mac was useful for me, only faster and nicer looking or whatever? And they're always trying to say, but we want to go beyond that. We want you to not need any ports. We won't need, if they could make mice and keyboards that you didn't plug in ever, they would, like tiny little atomic power plants. Like they would seal them up and just say like, you never plug these in, they're wireless forever. If they could put wireless power to the iMac so it looks like it did in their product shots, they would. Like they want to remove everything that makes this thing a computer. They wish if you could give like Johnny Ive a magic wand and say, you can make a computer that's anything you want, assuming he didn't immediately go into images projected on the back of your retina by nanomachines, he would just make a beautiful floating screen that floats in midair and has no edges, right? And input devices that are invisible, that either are mind controlled or are controlled by your hands not touching anything, and there would be nothing. Like they all want to get rid of the computer and just make it's you and the screen, and that's all there is. Maybe they'd make something like VR or whatever. And so I see in this thing that you're attributing to aesthetics, as in I want this to look like a beautiful sculpture, or nickel and diming, as in, no, the GPU and the iMac could support two external screens, as people in the chat room are saying, but that would mean more ports, and more ports means supporting those ports and making sure we have the buses to go through them. It's more expensive to do that, and I got to drill more holes in the case or whatever. Them just trying to say, we just want to, Johnny Ive and his white world, boil it down to its essence. What is it? Just you and the screen. You shouldn't need more than one screen. Just you and this beautiful screen that's just wrapping around your whole head, and it's all you can see, and you put your hand on the sushi, and you touch a little keyboard that has no edges, and nothing is plugged in, and there are no wires, and that's the world, I see them striving for that, and I kind of applaud them striving for that, and I don't attribute it all to just Johnny Ive's disconnect from like, well, I don't want people to actually use these things, I just want them to be sculpture. I feel like he does want them to be useful things. He just has the same sort of allergy that I always sense in Steve Jobs to the to the greebles in ILM parlance, or special effects industry parlance, of computers, the little doodads and doohickeys and ports and flanges and switches. I mean, that's why rotation lock has gone from the stupid iPad. Because, like, can we get rid of that switch? If we can, get rid of it, because I want there to be nothing. I just want it to be a screen. Like, that's why everyone thinks the home button is going away. There's, like, one of the few remaining moving parts in the thing. So I totally get your point. I'm myself internally conflicted about applauding their aspirations, while at the same time saying you missed the mark with this particular feature or product or whatever. We may differ on what those are. So I get where you're coming from, but I sympathize.
Well, but most of what you just said, I agree with. It's just really an issue of the balance, and whether they have the right balance now or not. I totally agree that generally the track they're on, the direction they're going is generally good, and I generally think, obviously the world thinks so too. It's working for them, and who am I to say that this massively successful company is doing something wrong? But the reality is that in the real world there are things that are not ideal with the way some of this stuff works, and I do think, again, I think they're on the right track overall. But there are little course corrections that are necessary that are not happening now. That it does seem like it's kind of out of whack with the priorities, and that might get magnified over time. I don't know. I mean, when I read that Johnny Ive was moving into the clouds to be his new position, I was happy. Everyone else was like, "Oh no, we're gonna lose Johnny." I was like, "Let him ascend into the heavens to whatever he wants to do," because I would love to get new blood under him, get new people up there, get new ideas here.
I mean, there's a whole team. That's the whole thing with Johnny Ive, though. He's not coming up with all these designs. The most you can say is that he's giving yes, no, no, yes to 17 designs that are presented to him. And so in that way, he has an influence over the company. But other people are designing these products, and maybe he gives them notes. Maybe he says, I'm thinking like an egg, but with no rounded parts, go. And I don't know what he says to people to inspire them, but he's not there with a pencil drawing every single product. I don't know which products he even has a hand in, but you're right. In the same way that Steve Jobs wasn't drawing anything. He was just sitting back and say, I'm thinking leather, on my Learjet, and then iOS 6 would come and he would go, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes. Look at this leather sample, no, no, yes. Johnny Ive is more involved than Steve Jobs in just saying no and yes, but we're using him as a stand-in, just for the people who get the idea that Johnny Ive is designing. We're using him and his philosophy as a stand-in. So with new blood, I feel like with him ascending, that maybe that he is delegating more of the what makes the cut and what doesn't, and maybe also delegating the direction. What I always think about is, did you guys never read the Johnny Ive book? It's a good one, the Leander Caney one. It's pretty good. Talking about the early iMac designs and how they're well, we can go a lot of ways with this phone thing. It's probably going to be some kind of rectangle, rounded, and we have a couple different designs. And one of the ones that came up really early on was essentially the iPhone 4 design. You know the one we all know. It's it looks like an ice cream sandwich with the metal thing and then the glass thing on the front and back. That was one of the very first designs they were thinking of for the iPhone. They just couldn't make it happen for the iPhone 1. It was just well, that's great and all. That was one of their ideas in the mix, and it was manufacturability problems and how big it had to be and the timeline that they had. And so they basically had to say, even though we like that design the best, what about this design? Or what about this design? But the iPhone 1 design they came up with was the fourth compromise down of none of us really like this design. If you think of the original iPhone, you can tell that Johnny Ive was probably upset about many aspects of it, right? But it's the best they could do with the time and materials and skills they had at the time. But eventually, by the time the iPhone 4 came around, he didn't give up. He's I remember that ice cream sandwich one, and it was pretty awesome, and we're going to make that phone. And they did eventually make it. That's kind of the compromises that are necessary in industrial design. And I see in a lot of the products they're making now, the ones that look like transitional fossils, where it's well, we're not quite at the point where you can get rid of all these things, but they have a design that almost tries to get rid of them, but leaves this little weird vestige. And in that way, you can kind of see the previous iteration. Now that the new keyboard is out, look at the old tiny Bluetooth keyboard, and you're what is all that crap around the edge, and why is that big barrel thing over there? I don't understand it. It seems unnecessary. And that's what they're trying to do with their advancement. Maybe they had this idea, the first time they drew, we're going to make a Bluetooth aluminum keyboard. Go. They drew, and they said, yeah, we can't do that because we need a place to put batteries, and we it needs to be bigger, and we're coming. How about this? I don't know if that's true. I'm just making this up. But the whole idea that what I'm fighting against is the idea that anyone inside Apple is particularly pleased with any product they produce, because I think every product they put out there is potentially a design that they really wanted to make that they either couldn't or didn't make that's still sitting in the back of their own mind and gnawing at them. That's what drives them forward to make the next one. So maybe what I'm saying is maybe a lot of people inside Apple are just as disappointed in like the lumpy back of the iMac as we are, and just that like that's design is compromising. I have to say, what can we ship, and what's the best we can make it look? Even the 20th anniversary Mac. Do you guys remember that, the big vertical thing? You don't remember. It's before your time. Anyway.
Oh, is this the one that Hackett's obsessed with?
Yeah, it's weird looking. Anyway, that one, it was at Johnny Ive Design. Oh, I'm going to make this beautiful 20th anniversary Mac and use one of these new fancy LCD screens. They're going to have leather and wood and all this stuff like that. But then they said it had to have like ports or I forget what the thing was. It had to have some expandability. He's like, oh, and he had to put this big giant backpack on the thing. Like he had to take his design that he liked and add like 2 inches, like this big lump on the back of it. And so you can see, if you Google for it, you can see the 20th anniversary Mac both with and without the lump. I forget if it was expansion chassis or expansion cards or something like that. That was mandated to him from above. The Johnny Ive of today will not let that be mandated to him from above. If someone says, oh, but by the way, after you've already designed the thing, it actually has to have 3 more ports, drill some more holes, he's going to go, no. And that I think is better, because I think the compromise in the 20th anniversary Mac makes that machine worse than if he had just said, I'm making it the way I want to make it, and if it doesn't have whatever the feature that was the backpack added, oh well, tough luck, that's what it's got. And then you can just sort of accept it and say, this is the computer, and it looks the way I want it to look, and it's got the features that I want, and if you don't like it, no one will buy it, like the Power Mac G4 Cube, and we'll go back and we'll reconsider. We'll go back to our rooms and think about what we've done and try again and try to make a computer people will buy.
I don't know how I feel about this, because on the one side, I agree with you guys, and I think that there are a lot of compromises. I would love to have a phone that I would never even have to think twice about lasting all day. I would love to have a phone that when I go to a football game and I know I'm going to be using my phone a fair bit and I'm going to be searching for signal for 3.5 hours, I don't need to bother putting it in a battery case. Yes, I am aware that the Plus Club exists, but I am a human with human-sized hands, so I want a human-sized phone. I would love to have a phone that's a little thicker with a little more battery, but I'm looking at my phone now, and it is a freaking beautiful device. It really, truly is. And with this Apple leather case on, it is perhaps less beautiful than it could possibly be, but it's still freaking beautiful. And I charge my phone every night and only have to worry about battery life when I know I'm going to be using it hard all day long. Otherwise, I never have to worry about it. Is that really so bad? Could it be better? Sure. But is that really so bad? I was thinking earlier today in my continued deep thoughts that I really do love this new 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro that work got me. It's beautiful. It's thinner, noticeably thinner. I like that it's thinner. I like that it doesn't have an onboard optical drive. I kind of wish it had an onboard Ethernet port, but I can fix that very easily.
What year is this?
I know. Well, I'm just saying, because I know.
I know. He needs low latency for when he plays Quake 3 Arena. He doesn't really want to wait for the Wi-Fi latency.
God, here we go. Actually, all kidding aside, I needed to get. I already had one, but I would have needed to get a Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter for work, because the company where I am working does not give access to the restricted areas of their network except by hardline. So with my Mac, I need to get on an Ethernet connection in order to get to the servers that I need in order to develop the things I need to develop. So would I have liked to have had an onboard Ethernet port? Hell yeah. But would I have chosen that over just bringing the dongle and having a device that's perfect or nearly perfect in every other measurable way? I'd probably take the dongle. So I don't know. It's a very tough thing. And this is what makes engineering so beautiful, is that you get to make these tough engineering decisions as to what's more important. And I agree with you, especially John, that I think every engineering decision that Apple makes, I would expect that they have a serious amount of regret about every single one, but they're doing the best that they possibly can. And I think that's the case with all of their devices. And do they have room to do it better? Sure. Better for me? Absolutely. But better for everyone? I don't know.
That's what you're always looking for, or at least what I'm always looking for in the Apple computer, is the time when it all comes together, when there were no major design compromises that had to be made. Like it wasn't like we wish we could have made it this thin or this size or had this battery life or this performance or this feature, but we didn't have enough room, or it was too expensive, or the parts weren't ready in time, or the material we were going to use didn't work out or whatever. And it's just an all-around good computer that's like ahead of its time, that lasts for a long time, that is sturdy, that is nice looking, that the looks don't go out of date. Like it's the same thing with cars for that matter. 911 aside, when there's the one model, when there's the one model that's like, that was the one to get. That's where it all came together briefly. Even if it all came together like, oh, the 65 version of that is, the height of the pre-fuel injection era, like just the beautiful specimen where it all comes together. And those computers are rare. Like the Macworld did those big like best Mac ever things, and the SE30 kept coming up. A, because I picked it and it's the correct answer, and B, because a lot of other people felt the same way about it, and that obviously modern Macs are so much better, but for that time it was the perfection of that form. It was they had perfected that form factor. The innards of it were the best innards they could possibly be. Everything about it was better than all previous computers of that size. It lasted a long time. You could expand it in ways that you didn't expect. It was sturdy. It was beautiful. Like it was just that was a peak. And I think you can pick out other models that are like that. The 5K iMac could be like that. Maybe you could quibble over the Thunderbolt compromise and say, well, it's like in between the Thunderbolt 3 era and the USB-C era, so it was a little bit weird, so maybe it doesn't qualify. But I don't know. I'm sure we can pick out ones like how about the 2008 Mac Pro? A pretty damn good, like kind of in the middle of the run of the cheese graters, post Intel, after all the G5 stuff or whatever, but before they started to get kind of long in the tooth. And that's a great computer. That was a high point. When we're looking at any other type of device, we have to say, like for the iPhone line, what are the high points in the iPhone line? I would definitely pick, for industrial design anyway, the 4. But maybe I'm wrong about that because I'm not looking at like the broken home buttons and the crappy antenna when you grab the edges of it and stuff. But like industrial design wise, ignoring the other parts of the thing. So maybe that's not the one. Like I don't know. What would you guys say?
I'd say the high points were the 3GS and the 5S.
Maybe. I mean, like everyone's got their own things, but it depends on what criteria you're choosing from. And the thing is, for the designers, do they care so much? Like, oh, the stupid engineer screwed up the home button. That's not my fault. The part that I did, my design, like I like that sandwich phone, or I really liked, like you said, no one likes the 3GS, I think, inside Apple's industrial design because it just had this big plastic bubble on back of it. But anyway,
right. But for the time, it was insanely fast. Great innards, huge upgrade from the past one. It was also very practical. It had great gripability on that case. It was durable, and long term, you could see I don't think it really had any major hardware flaws. Whereas the 4 had the antenna issue, it had the bad proximity sensor, and then the 4S had those dying home buttons, and the 5 had the flaky finish. And it's like there was all the and the 5 also I believe had a home button issue, or a sleep wake button issue. Whereas the 5S, I think, actually really was pretty rock solid. Like I don't think anybody really had consistent hardware problems with the 5S, and I would say the design there was a high point.
That's your priorities. I would imagine that there's not anyone on Apple's industrial design team who would pick the 3GS as their design high point.
No, definitely not.
Because just isolating that part of it. And so you're like, I don't care that much about the design. It was nice and it looked nice and it was grippable, but the point is that it felt good, it was fat. Like all the things that you listed are the product attributes that you give a ranking of like which ones do you prioritize. And that's why maybe the design people would prioritize the materials and physical appearance and be like, well, I had no control over the stuff they put inside the phone, so if they screwed that part up, it's not my fault, and I feel like the pinnacle was whatever their favorite design is. And the flaking finish, even, you could even see someone would be like, well, flaking finish, that's not really my problem. They probably wouldn't say this because Apple's industrial designers know this is their problem too, but they say, it looked perfect when it was new, just don't touch it, don't even look at it. It can't be played. I can't do the accent, but Mike has seen that movie now. I'm finally listening to Mike at the movies, and I realize all these movies now, Mike is seeing them in case he's not.
Like which one?
Well, this was Spinal Tap. You didn't see that one with him,
Nope, definitely not.
Yeah, anyway. Marco, I've given up.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Anyway, the point is we should all be kings of our own companies with the resources of Apple, and then we can make exactly the products we want until we find out that we can't get what we want either because the materials aren't available or the chips cost too much or Intel's not ready or whatever.
Our last sponsor this week is Fracture. Go to fractureme.com. Fracture is vivid color prints of photos directly on glass. These prints look awesome. I have so many of them around my office now. Our friends are all getting them. They are so nice. So here it is. You get your photos printed on a slab of glass, and it's a nice thin slab of glass. So it's very, not only would Johnny Ive like it a lot because it's so thin, but it also works really well. It satisfies both of those sides because it is very, very lightweight. You don't have to be all stressed out the way I would be about hanging it on the wall and having to put in some giant drywall anchor and hope it doesn't fall out or tear a hole in your wall or whatever else. They're incredibly practical and they look great. Now, Fracture prints make great gifts also. Now, going into this holiday season, I highly recommend, first of all, in general, I highly recommend Fractures as gifts. I have done that myself many times. I'm doing more of them this holiday season. However, Fracture prints are all handmade and checked by real people in Gainesville, Florida. In the holiday season, they often get really backed up with orders because there are just so many people who have figured out, thank you everyone, who have figured out to use Fracture for holiday gifts that sometimes they can't, if you wait until mid-December, say, to order a holiday order, you might not be able to get it in time because they're going to be so backed up by then. So they want to ask you, please, if you're going to be ordering for the holidays, place your orders now because it's already, as we record this, it's mid to late October already. It's November is coming very soon, and then December comes right after that. In case you've forgotten, I frequently forget, and it surprises me. But trust me, you want to get these orders in now because Fracture, many people have figured out how good this is. And they're all right. Many people have figured this out. Please place your holiday orders now for Fracture prints. Vivid color prints of your photos directly on glass. They make great gifts. They're great to hang up around your house, around your office. I use mine to have my app icons printed whenever I make a new app. I print out the icon. I have this nice little trophy row up top. So check it out at fractureme.com and use code ATP15 for 15% off your first order. Once again, fractureme.com. Use code ATP15 for 15% off your first order. Big thanks to Fracture for supporting us for so long. Thanks a lot. Recommended.
All right. What is Facebook battery?
All right. So actually, I think Vatixi's been one of the leading investigators on this, right?
Oh, you're talking about the ridiculous battery usage?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So everyone's, I think people have known for a while that the Facebook app is incredibly battery inefficient, but nobody really had a great idea of why or how that was that way. And a few things changed in iOS 9. One of the biggest things that changed is that the iOS 9 battery shaming menu or screen and settings, it now will tell you, how many hours things were on screen and how many hours they were in the background. And it'll also tell you what they were doing in the background. So it'll say things like audio or network or whatever. So it'll tell you what it was doing, background refresh, what it was doing in the background. People have been noticing that the Facebook app is somehow being woken up really for very long times for background usage, even when these people are not using the app. So they'll have one guy had the app was open for 2 minutes, was in the background for 7 hours or something like that, and had used up a ton of his battery. Some crazy difference like that. And more importantly, what people are finding, even if they disable background app refresh, it was still finding ways to run in the background, and in some cases use even more battery, often by doing really, really sleazy tricks. So do you remember back forever ago in 2009, 2010, something like that, forever ago, before you could do much in the background of iOS, one of the things you could do was if you were one of the very first backgrounding modes in iOS 4, whenever that came out, one of the very first things you could do was you could play audio. So if you're an audio player, if you were a podcast app, or if you're a streaming music service, that was one of the things that you could run indefinitely if you're playing audio. And so one of the very first things that somebody, I forget who it was, was it Tapbots that made, was it Pastebot that did this?
They played silence the whole time. Yeah.
Yes. So they submitted an app that through this clever hack you could run indefinitely if you were playing audio. And so they figured out that if you just played silence, if you're invoking the audio buffer, but you're just sending it all silence in the buffer, your app can run indefinitely. And so they were using this to do clipboard history management and clipboard sharing between computers and everything. And Apple very quickly figured out what they were doing and banned them from doing this. Facebook is now doing that same trick in 2015 and Apple's permitting it. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, is that what it's come down to? I didn't realize we figured it out.
Yeah, so people have done some investigation, and Facebook is using background audio to play silence to stay running as long as possible, and among other tricks. And so, and I can explain at least one thing. So first of all, I've had so many people report bugs to me in Overcast that sound really weird about like not playing in the background after they've launched Facebook or something, and now I'm suspecting this might be related to Facebook's stupid activity. But also, people have wondered, if I block you with background refresh, and if I disable background refresh for your app, and I've quote force quit your app by removing it from the multitasking switcher, how do you still run in the background? And I can answer this question. Back when Newsstand was unveiled, one of the cool new things Newsstand apps could do was called a content available push notification. Now, normally, if you run a web service and you want to like send something to all the iPhone people that are using your app, you could send notifications. But previously to that, notifications had to be visible on screen. You couldn't just send an app like an empty notification to have it just start running and download new stuff. You couldn't do that before. You could send it an alert, and it would show the box and the text, and the user could then say, okay, enter the app, and then it would launch. But all that was user controlled, and so you couldn't be doing it behind the user's back, and you had to have the user interacting with it to actually get launched again in the background. With Newsstand, they added this new thing called content available pushes, where for a while it was only Newsstand apps could do this. They could be woken up remotely by their servers. You as the service owner could wake up all the instances of your app by sending this special push notification that was silent. It did not show anything to the user. And the way they initially so first it was just on Newsstand. And then I think it was iOS 7 that made content available push notifications available to all apps. You could be waking up your app all the time. And so initially Apple would throttle these things, and they would be like, it would only allow it to wake up the app once a day, or only when it was plugged in or something. And over time, those restrictions have gotten loosened. And in 8, you could wake up your app pretty frequently if you really wanted to with content available. It was pretty reliable. You could usually wake your app up, but if the user quit you out of the multitasking switcher, so if they force quit your app, you wouldn't get those anymore. And in iOS 9, they changed that. In iOS 9, even if background refresh is off, because background refresh is a separate thing. Background refresh is a system of periodically waking up the app to do something, and the user can control that. However, there is no system control for whether to allow an app to receive content available silent push notifications. And I haven't tested this with the Facebook app because I don't have it installed because I'm not insane. Sorry, Facebook people. I don't use Facebook enough to use their app, but I recognize that it's very popular. Different viewpoints. Anyway, so I don't know. I'm curious to know if Facebook people can test this who are experiencing these battery problems, because people are saying, I disabled background refresh, but it's still doing all the stuff in the background. Try disabling all notifications. Anyway, in 8, if you force quit it, those content available silent pushes would not come through. In 9, they still come through. So in 9, even if you have, quote, force quit my app, if I send content available from my server to your phone and you've enabled notifications, my app will wake up in the background and I can start doing something. I can start a background download. I can start playing silent audio forever, like Facebook does. So I'm curious if disabling notifications entirely is the fix.
You mean disabling them entirely on the entire phone, or just for the Facebook app?
Just for the app, but because there's in each app there's the notifications area, and then there's this big master switch up top, allow notifications, and then there's the more granular stuff, show notification center, badge the app icon, what shape should they be? But if you turn that off for Facebook, I wonder if then it won't get these notifications. But anyway, so that's what they're doing. It seems, and they issued some kind of weird response, just like the Volkswagen thing. Well, it must have been some bug or rogue engineer, some BS. But the reality is, this is a disgusting company, and they do lots of unethical things. And this is just one thing. They're doing it because they can. This is not the kind of thing that you program accidentally. They're doing it because they can. And what's Apple going to do? Reject the Facebook app? This is kind of they can't really do that much for it. And I think it's unfortunate, but that's just the power dynamic. This is also from the talk show. the Facebook app is most likely the most popular third-party app on iOS by a long shot. My guess is it's number one and YouTube is number two, but you can't exactly tell Facebook, you you can't do this anymore. Like, how much power do they have? I mean, I kind of wish they would exert that power a little bit more here, but they might not really be able to, but I don't know. Either way, this is... If you are a Facebook user, you should not be surprised by this. You should be mad, but you should not be surprised. And this is just what Facebook does, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add about this. I don't use the regular Facebook app because around the time, this is probably a year ago now, but around the time the Facebook Messenger became a thing, they eventually took the ability to send and receive messages out of the standard Facebook app, but they would still send you a push notification. They still had the entry point to the messages section in the app. So it was like a tab or something like that. But you would get there and they would say, oh no, we've moved this to a new app. You have to go get that other app. Oh, it's so sad. This is stinky. But I refused to go get that other app because I almost never send or receive Facebook messages. Eventually, I got sick of this and I got sick of the Facebook app, and so I downloaded Facebook Paper, one of the 85 things named Paper that is in our little world, and that allows you to send and receive messages, and so that's what I use if I'm using anything with Facebook on my phone. And it's fine. I mean, it's pretty, but otherwise unremarkable. And that was basically it for me. However, Aaron does use the normal Facebook app. And the other day, I noticed when I was looking at battery usage that it looked really high, but I didn't think much of it because I didn't know if perhaps she had been using Facebook all day or something. And then it was just a day or two later that all this kerfuffle started about battery usage, and I really wish I had paid closer attention to it. But I have been intending to keep closer track of the app's usage, and I did turn off like background updates and all the things that you guys described. And I suspect, and I think that's exactly what you said, Marco, that it's still getting used a lot for seemingly no reason. And that's just gross. Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, kids. And yet, when you're a company as big and powerful as Facebook, when you likely have the most popular third-party app on the platform, you can get away with this. And it's kind of too bad that Apple allows it. That, they should have reacted in some way, shape, or form publicly, in the sense that maybe they should have pulled the app, or not like disabled it on existing devices, but maybe you can't download it from the App Store or something. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm being ridiculous, but I feel like it's stinky that the big, powerful people get away with things that the little guys can't.
Yeah, my question is, what benefit does Facebook think this provides them? Like, just ignore everything else about it. This Facebook, let's assume Facebook does this on purpose because, because they want it. Why do they want this? Like, wouldn't you think it would be bad? Like, what does their app need to do all the time? Like, what?
Gather data. Seriously.
About what? About like where they're getting location data from the phone? I'm just wondering, like, because
they might be.
Because I don't think there's that much. Like, if the Facebook app just said, I don't know what the interval is, but like, wake me up every 15 minutes to get updates, or is it the immediacy of being able to, like, I'm always running, so as soon as something happens to Facebook, people know right away instead of having to wait for a background refresh interval or something like that? Because Facebook must also know the downside, which is that you're going to run people's batteries down more. And I don't know if they just assume, well, they'll find a charger somewhere because they're not going to go without their Facebook updates. Or they'll use their phone less. Like, you would think if you had an app, what you'd be trying to get, maybe information. Maybe you're right, Casey. The thing is, like, we don't want your engagement or interaction with the app. We just want your information. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand from their perspective how it makes sense to try to have your app be running all the time.
So to put things in perspective, just today I was at the dentist's office, and the dentist nurse, we were talking, waiting for the dentist to come in. And I don't remember how we got on the subject, but she said to me, oh yeah, the other day I went to that place. I believe she said she was talking about Facebook. I might be getting this confused with Google, but I went to this place on Facebook where it'll show you like all the stuff it knows about you and all the places you've been. And it was super creepy because it knew everywhere I had been. And so, granted, this is one data point, completely anecdotally, from a person who just 10 minutes before told me she was completely inept when it comes to computers. But this conversation happened completely naturally. I didn't prompt it. I didn't interrogate her. She said to me, "Oh, yeah, it's so creepy what they know. That's so weird." So I suspect it is just data gathering. And maybe there's, non-nefarious purposes as well. Like when you start the app, you want it to be totally refreshed, blah, blah, blah. But I think mostly it's for data gathering.
I mean, it's probably all of these things. It is probably, if they do any kind of like continuous location or periodic location monitoring, I'm sure it's for that. I'm sure it's, if they're doing any kind of analytics of, what kind of phone you have, whatever it is, there are things they can measure. I'm guessing it's probably a little bit about location, and it is almost certainly what John said. It's almost certainly about engagement. It is about, I'm sure that having your app running in the background, being able to get data immediately from your server, being able to start downloading things, like to start caching things, to start preloading things, things that you're going to be looking at. I'm sure it's for all those reasons, and I'm sure the overall reason is, data gathering is probably part of it, and the other thing is just engagement, because if they can increase the amount of time, if they're basically always running or running as much as they possibly can, then they can get you notifications faster, they can get you data faster, they can get you new stuff downloading faster, and it's all about reducing the friction so that not only can they bother you as often as possible to come back to the app, but also that when you are there, there's no delay in loading anything. Because they've measured that both people like that, and also it increases our numbers. It makes us X, per year of more engagement and more growth hacking or whatever. That's why, there's plenty of reasons why they want to do this. Those are the two big ones.
Yeah, that makes me wonder if there was a setting in the app that said, should we try to run in the background even when every setting you're telling us is basically to let the users choose which behavior they want, because that would be an interesting choice. Because if they didn't do this, when you launch the Facebook app, less stuff would be loaded, presumably. I'm assuming that they're taking advantage of that. Which user experience would people prefer? Would they prefer it that when you launch the Facebook app, it's up to date and most of the stuff is loaded? Would you prefer it that as soon as your friend posts something, you know about it immediately? Would people trade the battery hit for that immediacy? Most people will think about, Facebook app is using my battery too much. If they're techie enough to know that, Facebook app is using my battery, I wish it didn't. Do you really wish it didn't? If we took away all of the things that it's doing during that battery time, because then you'd be like, the Facebook app is so slow. Every time I launch, it's got to load a bunch of stuff. I'm wondering what trade-off people would make. Because like I said, as the app maker, if you're sucking everyone's battery down, do you think you're going to lose engagement because they're going to say, well, it's lunchtime, and normally I would keep looking at Facebook, but my battery is too low, so I'm not going to. No, they'll just find a charger, I guess, or they'll use a battery pack or something I wonder if they've determined that this is the trade-off that people would choose anyway, so let's just aggressively be in the background. And, and the other part of it, speculating, is just the game of chicken with Apple, because like you both said, what are you going to do, pull the Facebook app? Good luck with that. That will hurt your iPhone sales numbers more than pretty much any other app pulling that you could possibly do. I was getting an iPhone, but it doesn't have Facebook, so forget it, right? So that is a negotiation between those two powerhouses to say, Apple to say, please don't run your thing in the background so much. Facebook to say, I dare you to pull our app. I don't know how that's working out. Maybe they just don't even know. I mean, because Apple has been, like you said, Marco, changing the rules for the various push notifications and updates and all the other stuff. And surely they know the consequences of those with respect to the Facebook app. So
yeah, I'm sure that Apple has been in touch with Facebook over this by now. Because it's very possible Apple just didn't know about it. I find that a little hard to believe because it's just so widespread. But it's very possible that this was brought to their attention, or at least the right people's attention within Apple at the same time that we all learn about it. So I'm sure that somebody at Apple contacted somebody at Facebook to talk about this, and we'll see how it shakes out. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not surprised to see this, because Facebook's entire iOS app, they have this culture similar to Google has this too, this culture of extreme engineering arrogance to the point where they don't feel like they need to respect the platform they're running on. They feel like they know better and they're above it. And so the attitude at Facebook that permitted this to happen, I guarantee you this was not a bug. I guarantee you this was somebody saying, screw Apple's limitations, this is how we get around them, and we deserve it because we know what's best for us and for our users, period. And Apple's not involved in this discussion. Like, it's this culture of arrogance that is very, very common at Facebook and Google's engineering departments for sure. And you see it a lot in, the way like their app is this massive bloated mess of a million different custom written things to custom implement things from the system, and this massive app, and they're like rewriting their own Xcode because they break Xcode the way they use it, and all this crazy stuff that they do out of this arrogance. So like, if they think they're above the rules, that fits right into all that. It's not a surprise at all. And also, I would argue that this is actually kind of a hole, almost a security hole. It's like a battery hole on Apple's side, which is why do none of these switches that used to work or that seem like they should work? Like, why, if you turn off background refresh on an app, should content available notifications still come through? Because like, I know in the old world of iOS 8, when if you'd force quit an app, they wouldn't come through anymore. That caused definitely some support emails with Overcast because that's how I do my updates, and the notification I show on screen is a local notification. So it would cause problems in that people wouldn't expect that to work that way. They wouldn't expect that they force quit the app that it wouldn't get new data anymore ever. So it made sense to change that behavior from 8 to 9, but I definitely think that there should either be a separate switch, which is probably less good, or they should just roll this into the background refresh switch, which is if somebody has disabled background refresh for an app, it should not also still get content available notifications.
Do you feel like where you've commented on Google and Facebook's engineering arrogance, given our conversation earlier, do you feel like Apple's arrogance lies in industrial design? I think it's more than just that, but perhaps their largest bit of arrogance.
Apple has no shortage of their own arrogance. Believe me. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the people who love all these companies love them, because each of them has their own breed of arrogance in different areas, and they all think they know best for the whole stack, top to bottom. And that's what makes Apple ship what it ships as its Windows software, which gives a lot of Windows people a really terrible impression of Apple. Like iTunes and QuickTime for Windows back in the day, like that. Oh boy, this applies to all of them, but generally the results of one company being a little too pushy in some area, usually it hurts the customers on the other platforms, and this is one of those instances where like Facebook clearly thinks they're above the law with App Store rules and iOS system restrictions, and as a result, they really are hurting their users, and they're it's not good. So, but I don't think they care. They're benefiting themselves, and that's all Facebook ever does, and that's Facebook.
Well, that's all any company ever does. I mean, I don't think that's exclusive to Facebook or Google. I mean, I think Apple in many ways does the same thing.
They generally do, but I think, speaking of striking balances, I think Apple strikes a way better balance in that regard with quality and respect for their users than Facebook or Google. And I think Facebook is worse than Google. I mean, I'd put Google right in the middle there. I'd say Facebook is horrible. Google is in the middle, and Apple's decent most of the time. Anyway. Thanks a lot to our 3 sponsors this week, Squarespace, Automatic, and Fracture, and we will see you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
Now we got time to talk about Perl 6 for 2 seconds. We'll have a short after show.
2 seconds. Oh, Really?
People are asking about Perl 6 because Larry Wall gave a speech that said, "Hey, Perl 6 is coming. It's going to be ready." And people are asking me what I thought about it. I think I've discussed this before, speculating what I would think when Perl 6 is announced, and now that it has been, I'll say the same thing that I said before. I like Perl 6. I think it's a really interesting language, but my interest in it is proportional to the quality of the implementation. So I don't just want to be able to write Perl 6 in something that executes. I need it to be reasonably fast and stable and better than some other language I'm using at implementing real world applications. Because as much as I enjoy the language and what it looks like, I'm not going to build anything with it for realsy reals until it, like, all the benefits of the language is supposed to have, like, oh, look at all these constructs that are, that are ripe for actual concurrency, and look at the ability to pin down types that could let us use more efficient types internally to have higher performance. Well, unless I actually have the higher performance, unless it actually does the concurrency that is inherent in the semantics of the language, I'm much less interested in it. So I'm glad that they're deciding to put a pin in 6.0.0 and have it come out 15 years later or whatever, but I'm mostly interested in it when I can use it to build actual real things, because, like, it's not like I'm being super demanding about it. I really love the language. I think other language designers should study it and take the ideas from it or whatever, but I'm never going to learn what it's good for and what it's not good for until I can implement something in it. And I'm never going to implement something in it if the performance and reliability is worse than every other possible language I could choose. Now, I'm not saying that the performance and reliability are going to be terrible. I know it's improved. I know there's multiple backends because the JVM one might be faster because you're piggybacking all the JVM work that's been done over the past decades or whatever. It's just that I need to see that. I need to see, hey, like Marco, like, hey, I built this thing in Go and it was super fast and really reliable. And by the way, I got to learn Go and it was neat. I need to see someone else say, hey, I built this thing in Perl 6 and it was super fast and really reliable. And if I had built it in Perl 5, it would have been worse. And if I had built it in Python, it would have been worse. And if I had built it in Go, it would have been worse in this way or whatever. Like, that's what I'm looking for. That's just me personally. Your mileage may vary. So I encourage everyone to take up perl6.org, especially the people who have no idea what Perl 6 is, because people who don't have any idea what it is, I think they just think it's like PHP with different like dollar signs and stuff. And then nothing could be further from the truth. Like, Perl 6 is strange in ways. If Swift didn't exist, it would be more weird, because I think Swift has given everyone a kick in the pants of like, what the hell's going on with this language? Like, what are they trying to do there? It's like C with structs, but like it's got this weird stuff, like it's object oriented, but also it's got this functional stuff mixed in. Like, what the hell? Like, Swift is like Perl 6, like a tiny fragment of Perl 6. Like, Perl 6 exploded and a little tiny star came out of it and it dumped in some other things. But Perl 6 has got all the crazy. And all the crazy in the best sense, like crazy like a fox. So I encourage everyone who is interested in anything having to do with languages, check out the Perl 6 website, wade through the documentation until your eyes roll back in your head and you think these people must be on something. They probably are. Lots of good ideas in language still.
So I have two questions. First of all, on an infinite time scale, do you think you will use Perl 6?
If it's kind of one of those things like, is there something magical about them putting out a 6.0.0 that's going to make the implementation much better, much faster? I don't know about that, but I assume people will keep working on it because it's interesting. I assume at least a small group of people will have enough motivation to keep plugging away. I'm not entirely confident that they will ever get to the point where I end up using it to make a real project, because it is conceivable that for my entire life, it could be like a weird research project that is interesting to the people who toy around with it, but it never becomes sort of a thing large applications are written with. So I don't know there. I'm not going to say it definitely will, because it could, on an infinite time scale, it could just peter out and like people stop working on it and it becomes just a historical curiosity from which people take ideas going forward, which would be fine. Like, it's a lot of, Perl 5 for that matter. Most of its benefit, I think, has not been the part where it played the prime role in making dynamic web applications during the Web 1.0 era, but the fact that so many other people used Perl or looked at it and took those ideas forward into their own languages, yes, including Swift.
Question number 2. Which do you think is likely to happen first? You adopt Perl 6 or you replace your Mac Pro?
I'm replacing my Mac Pro way before I adopt Perl 6 for anything. Definitely.